Welcome back everyone once again for another tier list, and as promised on my prior video for the highway and heavy duty class vehicles, I did say I would do the off-road class vehicles next, and here we are at the end of year 3 pass, and some new additions have came along as well for this class too. So if you're wondering why another tier list, it's because the last one I've made for the off-road class vehicles has been pretty much a year since I've done them. So the last one was at the end of the year 2 pass, that was season 8. Well, we got 4 new seasons that came out in year 3, and at the end of the season 12, which is North Carolina, we have new vehicles here, so I felt it was time to update this tier list because some things have changed as well. So just like the prior video on the highway and heavy duty class trucks tier list, I'm going to give you a quick disclaimer here before we start. This is basically a personal tier list based upon well over 4,200 plus hours of gameplay and testing. That's not counting the research on the side and or any type of editing that goes into it. That's just simply gameplay. I've been playing SnowRunner pretty much exclusively since the launch of 2020. I rarely dabble in any other game but SnowRunner. That will change in the future and my hours probably will slow down, but in the meantime, that is my current hourage. During that time, I specifically dedicated my efforts into understanding performance of trucks created by the SnowRunner developers, as well as other areas of interest. As mentioned on prior tier list videos, guys, please keep in mind, this is my personal tier list based upon my reviews and my current working knowledge of them. Also, keep in mind that I'm going to have my favorites and my bias as everyone else does. We're only human, but I'm going to try and be as fair as I can. And lastly, each class will be ranked differently based upon the belief that each class should have a specific role or roles. And with those roles associated with that class, I will rank each truck accordingly. So basically, I will rank the off-road class very similar as I would the heavy duty class, because I believe the off-road class is just kind of a step above when it comes to performance, and they do have really good versatility. So some things I will rank them based upon, and these are not in order, is power, balance, efficiency, maneuverability is a new one, versatility, because I believe most off-road class trucks should be versatile, but however, keep in mind that add-on capabilities doesn't necessarily mean versatility. Another one's going to be performance, and the switchable all-wheel drive diff lock, or even having all-wheel drive diff lock, always-on features, blah blah blah, all the other stuff. So that will go into it too. However, the key factor is how impactful they have been on my gameplay since 2020, and this is clearly noted on my reviews and also on my streams as well. So this will be a quick overview. I'm not going to deep dive these vehicles. I already have. I do it on stream all the time. I've reviewed every one of these trucks. So if you want a little bit more information on them, please go check out my reviews on my channel, because I'm not going to explain every little single bit of information about these trucks. I do not want to make another 45-minute review or tier maker list like I did for the highway and heavy duty. So I'm going to kind of expedite this one and speed it up a little bit. So with that being said, guys, let's get started here. All right, so starting at the D category here, as usual, let's get started here and put the only vehicle that I actually put in this category, and that is the Azov 43191 Sprinter. The 43191 Sprinter actually has 250,000 torque, has the highest torque engine in this whole class here, which to me, I think is kind of wasted, because this vehicle can't really do much other than racing and contest, and you probably can use it as a scout or potentially a small rescue vehicle, scout support vehicle. It actually weighs 11.4 tons, so it's actually quite weighty. It has a special sport gearbox. I kind of use this sometimes, but I pretty much think the high range is going to be the move, because it has always-on all-wheel drive diff lock. Has its own stock tires, SPOs. I think these are actually pretty good. I use the OHS2 sometimes, but I think there's multiple tires you can use with this thing and still have a pretty good time. No race suspension option, and also its internal storage is kind of sad. It can't really haul trailers, and yeah, this is not really much for this big area back here. I think this could have been utilized to carry, I would probably say, some more fuel, more repair parts, and potentially could be repurposed to kind of fit the mission a little bit better than kind of like a one-track mind. So that's kind of why I put it here, is because, well, there isn't really a lot of racing in SnowRunner, and even if there is contests and timed events, I believe that you can just use another vehicle and probably have better success. But also I have to admit, it does have a very large fuel tank, pretty much top of the class with a fuel tank. I think it's tied for the top. So I feel like this truck just basically sits down there. It's not really useful in my opinion, but other people can use it and have success. All right, moving on. I'm going to expedite this so we don't have a 45-minute video. Let's talk about the Freightliner M916A1. I think it's a strong C actually. So the Freightliner, it comes in at 13.3 US tons, and the Freightliner M916A1, it has this engine that I talked about the other day. It's shared with those other vehicles, American vehicles like the heavy duty and such like that. There's a couple on this in this class that share the same engine. It's at 192,000 torque. This has a special off-road gearbox that is exclusive to itself. It does get a race suspension. It does have decent tire options as well. And it does have very few limited add-ons. And I think I wouldn't have docked this truck so much if it could use this saddle low with multiple low saddle trailers. However, the only saddled trailer that it really does a good job with is the flatbed 5-slot. If you use the sideboard bed 5-slot, you'll get collision up here on this little winch area or this little box. You can bypass it and push through it. But with the step deck low saddle trailer, this just impedes your ability to jackknife the trailer. And I think mobility is very high because I love low saddle. I think trucks with low saddle do a really good job, especially this one because it has always on diff lock. So a good thing is, because it has a low fuel capacity here and it actually can guzzle some fuel when it is stressed, just how it is. I love switching off all-wheel drive and getting better fuel consumption when I don't actually need all-wheel drive. I think even in the year 3 pass, this is a really good option to do is toggle off your all-wheel drive and just let your diffs run. But this is even better because you can actually come out of low gear, you still have always on diff, and yeah, you can be in high and have an always on diff lock and get pretty good performance. I think this truck is great. Its balance is not too bad. I would probably recommend either using the jats with this as well because it can kind of feel a little bit bouncy in some regard, but really if you're using a trailer, I think you just basically counterbalance and you're okay. But anyways, I do like using this truck. Even though I do rank it in a strong C, I feel like it is pretty strong. I use it a lot currently. I'm starting to use lower tier trucks, but even though I rank them low, I still think they are very, very useful. You pretty much will see me using a lot of mid to lower tier trucks a lot actually on stream as of late, because I'm just in that place in my life where I like using the lesser tiers. But anyways, let's move on here. The next truck I want to put up in here is actually the TUZ 108 Warthog. We're actually going to put the TUZ 108 Warthog up here, and then I'm actually going to put the Tatra T805 up here as well. So I believe these two kind of are, I would say, lower C range for me personally. So let's talk about these real quick. Quickly to talk about the TUZ Warthog, it actually gets these double MMD tires. I don't have these equipped right now. It has a very strong engine. It shares with both Azov brothers, the 5319 and the 64131. It weighs 4.9 US tons. Standard gearboxes, race suspension active and stock. So it gets 47-inch tires, has a pretty big fuel tank actually for being a smaller 4x4. But it does get these new MMD tires, so you don't really necessarily have to use the jats, because if you use the UOD2s, as you can see, they're single track. Now, this is a new update. It can use doubles for OMDs and also for the MMDs. So I think this is actually really good. Gives this thing some lateral stability as well. You can also use the 43-inch AMHS to give yourself lateral balance too as well. I think it needs it personally because it's a very squirrely truck to drive. However, I'm going to quickly say why I don't necessarily like using the Warthog. It's not necessarily due because of its ability. It's more or less because its front is so light that you necessarily can't do much with its add-ons. If you try hauling saddle low, I'm going to say good luck trying to keep its front wheels down, or if you're even going uphill, good luck trying to keep its wheels on the ground. It just has so much power at 210,000 torque, and it's very light, so it has a ton of power to weight, but it just can't really utilize it because it can't really keep its front end down just to steer. Has a little bit smaller of a fuel tank because of the cab area, of course, so the Actaeon has a little bit bigger of a one. But yeah, I don't really use the Warthog much because it's just so hard to steer with it, and it's just squirrely nature, but you can use it as a scout replacement or even a scout support, and it kind of fits the mission. Sometimes I use it on hard mode to just refuel vehicles if I don't need a big support trailer there or something of those sorts. So that's basically it. Okay, so the Tatra T805. T805, I do like the Tatras a lot. As you can see, the Tatra backbone here, I explained this on my reviews. You can go check that out for more detail. However, the Tatra is a very high power to weight vehicle. It is the lightest vehicle in this class at 2.9 US tons. Has the last TA240. I believe this is 185,000 torque. Standard gearboxes, AMHS tires. So I would probably use the AMHS tires, to be quite honest, because just for the lateral balance, I don't really necessarily care about being able to go through any type of super conditions in 2024. Who is going through super conditions? I definitely don't. Even if I can, I will try to avoid them because I'd rather get somewhere faster than just press my gas and spin through them for minutes upon end. I think with the heavy class trucks, with those bigger guys, with the tires and stuff like that, I think that's a little bit more of a factor. But for the smaller trucks like this, like I'm going to avoid those. I'm going to just go around them. But for this, I would use this for lateral balance. Absolutely. So for this truck here, it doesn't have a ton of add-ons. I do like using it as a support because I like having the fuel tank here and being able to go refuel trucks and or a little bit of repair as well. I like the T805. It just doesn't really suit my gameplay a lot. I can't really do a ton with it other than potentially being a replacement for a scout. But the thing is, with no autonomous winch, if you flip over, it's kind of game over and you have to come either rescue it or you have to recover it. And that kind of, just kind of takes away from it. So I think it stays where it's at. Here is the last vehicle that goes up into the C category. And I think this actually sits as a strong C. And this is probably where my bias comes in, but I'm going to say the Zikz 5368. And the 5368 is kind of weird because for a 4x4, that and its brother, the 566 Alpha, they come in a little bit heavier than the other 4x4s in this class. So like the Tatra 805, the TUZ16 Actaeon, the Warthog, and even the Croc, they're kind of very, I would say, lighter weight, right? Have high power to weight. And this vehicle right here does have high power to weight, but it actually comes in at 7.9 US tons, so it's a little bit heavier. It does have the JAT MMD tire, so it has those medium mud tires as well. There's only a few vehicles that actually get these. This is one of them. I think it's really cool. Comes in with the LAZ TA240. 185,000 torque. I think this is more than enough. Standard gearboxes, raised suspension, 47-inch tires on a small truck like this, similar to the Warthog. 47-inch tires, really nice. Switchable features. Its fuel capacity is all right. It doesn't have any roof racks or anything like that, but its fuel consumption isn't that bad. So something I do that does ding this truck is when we talk about versatility and add-on capability, those two things are very different. And I think this is a prime example here. And I'm going to go down and just drop this on here. If you see this fuel tank, this is 12 metric tons. You see how much it compressed that suspension? Now deploy this vehicle and drive down the road and watch how much this vehicle just hates this add-on. See, some vehicles I don't think are meant to actually have some of these add-ons, and they don't really fit the role of some of these add-ons that they're actually given in the game. This is a good example of them. However, I think this is a better option. And I'm really glad they put this in the game because this is actually how it should be. And another thing I really like about this truck, it does have a lot of really big add-ons, right? Van body and stuff like that. It doesn't suit it, but it has smaller ones as well. And I think the smaller ones actually suit it well. However, I think this truck can do a lot more than just a one slot sideboard bed. I actually like the haul saddle low with it. But here's the thing is, vehicles that only have one axle in the back, putting down 5 slots of cargo weight, I believe that they kind of struggle a little bit more. I think having the 2 axles back here is just so much more advantageous. And I think when you use it as such, you'll kind of figure that out. But I think it does it well, as good as it can actually. But I think another thing I do want to mention before I actually move on here is this vehicle actually can steer really sharp. And something I've noted on my review, you can go watch it, check it out. I can actually save my tip on this vehicle relatively easily just by, if I'm tipping to my left hand side, I'll just cut my wheel hard to the left and then just hit the gas, and I just retain my balance. So this is a truck that you actually can get away with some reckless driving if you're good at turning into your tips and stuff like that. But yeah, I love this vehicle, to be quite honest. So I think it's actually a strong C. Call me biased, but I do some big things with it. Okay, let's move on here to the B category. I'm gonna drop both of these guys up in here actually. And these guys are actually gonna say that no one's gonna dethrone them from the top of this class. This is like B+ right here, actually. So the two ANKs, the Mark 38 and the Mark 38 Civilian. So we'll talk about those. So they pretty much weigh the same amount. I think one weighs a little bit more than the other by just a tad, but effectively they're around the same weight, at around 12.1 US tons. And the Westline V12 is 210,000 torque, so the same torque range as the Azov brothers and the Warthog. You can see I have the high range on here because, yeah, it has always on all-wheel drive and diff lock. And basically it gets these MMD tires as well that only are on a few trucks, as I've said before. It also gets the AMHS tires, the balloons, so this truck can pretty much blaze. I do like using the Civilian over the MK38. I'm not actually going to go into the MK38 because they're effectively almost the same truck. So I'll just kind of talk about both of them here in one go. Basically, the Civilian is just, I think, a little bit more of a versatile version, or I would say more add-ons than the other one. It can just do more things. You know, I can be a support truck here, or I can haul saddle low, saddle high. I do like hauling saddle low with this thing. One thing I do want to mention is that when this truck was first released, its balance was terrible. And I believe they updated its balance properties and it became much more tolerable. So that is a good thing. And I do believe having these very wide MMD tires on here, or even the balloon tires with active suspension compressed, will give you your center of balance, get you a little bit lower to the ground so you're not sitting so high. But I mean, if you're hauling low saddle, use some angles with your trailer and I think you'll be all right. But I do think these tires really benefit this vehicle. It's very strong, it can trailblaze, but the one thing is it can burn through some fuel and it doesn't have much of it either. So that is the issue with the MK38. So I do like the Mark 38, it's a good truck, but yeah, that is just its little titch there. So anyways, let's move on here. I'm going to throw up in, we're going to talk about the Actaeon. Let's do that. All right, Tuz Actaeon. The crazy thing was I had this, I think on my last tier list, I actually had this down here in the C, and I'm actually bringing this up, and it's really just for one reason only. And we'll talk about that. And I think everyone kind of already knows what that reason is, but we'll talk about everything else other than that. So the Actaeon, same thing, comes in with the LAZ TA240. It's a pretty light vehicle. It's actually the second lightest in this class at 4.1 US tons. Standard gearboxes, raised active suspension, and 47-inch tires at its max. So it has a lot of tire options. I would say I'd probably use the balloon tires on this truck as well. I think those are a good pick. You do have OMDs, and then you also have these MMDs too as well. Get you a pretty wide footprint down to give yourself stability. However, when we talk about stability here, the great thing about using the Actaeon is it has the autonomous winch. So this is what I would like to say a true scout replacement vehicle. You effectively can put yourself, put a nice little fuel tanker on here like I have here, roof rack, and just go scout whole maps with this thing. Has the ability to go through super conditions if you want to do so. I have these on here just for lateral stability. This was prior to the new tires coming out, so you probably will see these tires change. I'll probably put the MMDs on there just to have a little wide footprint in the back. But honestly, I think this is the reason I believe this truck goes out in front or even up into the B category now, because it's the only vehicle outside the Scout class that has an autonomous winch, and I think it's huge. So it's essentially like a crossover. It's like an off-road crossover Scout, and it also has some pretty cool add-ons. I think even hauling long logs with this thing is actually kind of fun to do. It has really good add-ons that pretty much suit it. You know, single sideboard bed, which when this truck and the Warthog came out, season 1 had a lot of 1-slot cargo and also some missions where you're just going and discovering places. So yeah, it kind of incentivizes using these vehicles. Also, I want to mention that this truck does have the same equivalent of a Scout fuel trailer in this fuel tanker right here. It has a bigger fuel tanker than the Warthog because the Warthog has a bigger cab. So just keep that in mind. Very high power to weight, switchable features, very small gas tank, but however, roof rack. And if you use this this fuel carrier, yeah, I think you're pretty much good to go. And that's kind of what I would use it as is like a Scout support or just a straight up Scout replacement. And it actually is has been very beneficial for me to use personally on my gameplay. Because an autonomous winch is probably one of the strongest features you can have in this game, having that second, third, fourth try at things, you know what I'm saying, if you tip over. And that's just something. The Actaeon isn't very balanced though. It's just when you're using it and you understand that you have an autonomous winch, just stick near trees and you're fine. And that's pretty much it. All right, next I'm gonna talk about the BM17. Let's throw the BM17 up here as well. I think the BM17 probably sits at the lower part of the B class, to be quite honest. I do like it a lot. I've used it quite a bit. I've driven it out of the location that I found it in, completely broken down, on highway tires from its location. That's all documented. But I think its main thing that kind of hurts it a lot, there's two things here. It doesn't have any diff lock at all. I think I can get around this one having no diff lock. And then the other thing is it's just a tippy truck. Has some weight in its cab. And then another thing that kind of exacerbates that is its front collision model is down here, right? And this front end, this overhang here can get caught a lot on things. Now you see me using the stock suspension here, and I probably could, if I was hauling a low saddle, I probably would increase this, put on 51-inch tires. This is a really good thing about this truck. It can have 51-inch tires. Not many American trucks do have 50+ inch tires, especially in the off-road class. This is probably one of the only ones, to be quite honest. So what I would do is use my low saddle in my trailer to counterbalance myself. I don't necessarily like the departure angles of this, essentially, but what happens is if you catch your nose on something when you're off-roading, it violently upends your vehicle. And that's actually noted on my review for this truck. You can go check that out for yourself. However, I do think the BM17 is a actual pretty good vehicle, to be honest. It shares the same engine we talked about multiple times at 192,000 torque. It's actually pretty heavy. The Royal BM17 is 11.6 US tons. And yeah, it has a lot of options. I have done a lot of things with this truck. It has a ton of add-on options. It can be very versatile. It's just you're not going to have a diff lock. So the ways around a diff lock is either auto, low plus, or just forcing high. And that's why a lot of people just straight up use the high range with it. Or if you're using the off-road, low plus, auto, or high are going to be your best friends to just force power, as much power as you can to the wheels to turn, because that's effectively what diff lock does. It just makes all tires spin at the same rate, right? But yeah, I think the BM17 is a good truck. It's just, yeah, there's no way I could put it anywhere higher. I think me putting it in the B is a pretty lenient, to be quite honest. Okay, so the next one, this is probably going to be my sleeper that I like a lot, actually. And I don't think it's a strong B in any right. I think it's probably a lower class B. So I would say these three are probably sitting in the lower portion of the B class, to be quite honest. But I do really like the Freightliner 114SD. Now, we'll talk about this in a little bit of detail. Okay, so I've been using this truck a lot on hard mode, and probably since season 9 when I got it for free. I didn't actually want to pay for this vehicle because of hard mode, blah, blah, blah. And I've been using it a lot on season 12 too, just on my normal playthrough. Couple really bad things about this truck is, one, it does have weight in its cab, but it does also have weight in its frame, okay? But with the weight in this cab, whenever you turn left and right, you will feel that sway back and forth. And that is, I don't want to say multiplied, but it's made worse when you put a crane on it like this, because the US crane weighs a little bit more than the Russian crane, and you'll feel this rock back left and right when you're turning. And that can kind of yeah, you could upset yourself pretty easily. But for me, I think I'm a little bit more comfortable with it, so I don't really feel that the truck is tippy per se. I actually think it holds on relatively well for how much it leans over. It's kind of crazy. When I drive it, it kind of surprises me. Another really bad thing I think about this truck is it has, I believe this is the worst engine in this whole class. The 2100 Tango only gives you 145,000 torque. This is the same amount of torque, I believe, that it's on the MH9500. And the problem with this is that the Freightliner 114 SD weighs 9.9 US tons. So it's actually a little bit heavier than that, right? However, I've been able to get around the power struggles with forcing my power to my rear axles, low saddle, and basically just diff lock back axles, and being able to get up hills with full 5 slots of cargo. And it's actually been pretty fun. It does have a very large fuel tank. Actually, this is pretty large, 80 gallons, 300 liters fuel tank. Its fuel consumption is pretty good, actually, because this engine doesn't really pull as much fuel. I think under extreme loads, you might see it jump up a little bit, but that's, yeah, like I say always, that's just the nature of it. Gets a raised suspension and yeah, switchable features. But however, this truck unlocks way too late in the game, and then also its upgrades come way too late, because by the time you get to White Valley, Alaska, there's so many other trucks that you get from Alaska, so many other trucks you get from Michigan. If you haven't skipped forward just from Alaska and Michigan alone, it's just completely outclassed, just in performance wise. I mean, it's true. It really is. I think I make it work very well. And I think it's a very good truck, to be honest. I like it a lot. I think it's a sleeper that not a lot of people use, but I think not a lot of people use it is just because there are just so many better options that come along before this truck can be available. I believe that this was available in like Black River, maybe even later in like Smithville Dam, or even very early in Alaska and being fully upgraded. I think this probably would have held its ground a little bit better with the community, but honestly, I like it. I think it's a sleeper. I do really well with it, but there's no way I could put it any higher than a low B. But I do suggest checking this out. Making this truck work is really fun. So that's all the time I'm going to spend on that one. All right. So the last one I'm actually going to put up in here, and I think this is a big sleeper as well, is the Step 310 Echo. I think the Step 310 Echo is either middle of the class or upper B class, to be honest. And a lot of people might disagree with me, but I think the Step 310 Echo is really strong. As you can see, everything is painted the same color because I'm starting to move my colors over. Okay, Step 310 Echo comes in at 8.3 US tons. Has the Laz TA240, also has the Voron engine. I believe this is 150,000 torque. I'd have to double check those numbers. I believe it's 150, but yeah, the fuel consumption is quite good on this one as well. You do drop off a little bit of power from the TA240 because this is 185,000 torque, but this is also a good option if you don't plan on hauling really heavy loads. Because the fuel tank is not really that big, but however, even with the TA240, I feel my fuel consumption is not really that bad at all. You can always redirect power to diff lock, turn off all-wheel drive, do all those things to save gas. And I think this truck is amazing, to be quite honest. It only has 43-inch tires. Its tire options are not Russian truck tire options, so it only has medium tire options. So the UOD2s are pretty much, or the OMD2 or the OMD3s, UOD2s, or just an OMD tire is the only option you're gonna get. So it's a medium weight tire. Unlike most of the big 6x6s that we're gonna get to here, they have heavyweight tires. This does not. Kind of confusing, but I think it still does a really good job despite all those things. I believe it is one of the more stable trucks that I've driven actually in the off-road class. It's kind of funny that way, but I do believe it can support pretty much every single add-on that it has, even though it has a smaller size. Its ground clearance is actually not too good with having 43-inch tires. Its vehicle collision model is actually pretty good, I like how its fuel tanks are kind of tucked up into here, so you're not going to get a lot of contact underneath, and that's kind of where you can get hung up. American trucks get hung up because they have those big fuel tanks. This does not. Basically, is almost in line with its frame. I like it a lot, so I think you guys should give this truck a try. It's kind of like one of my closet MVP picks of the class that I use quite a lot. There's a running joke in my channel that my favorite truck is this vehicle, that I always defer to using the Step 310 Echo, especially on hard mode, but I just like it a lot. I do suggest you use it. Okay, let's start here with the A category. First, this is just going to happen here. Step 3364 Crocodile. I believe I moved this one up actually, and we'll talk about why. And you're probably wondering right now, why in the world is the Step 3364 Crocodile up there in the A category? And I'll try to do a good job of explaining this. Okay, during my review of the Step 3364 Crocodile, there was something. I actually took my test footage, and I actually just literally edited it, and it went into my review, because this truck, out of probably this truck and a couple others that we're going to talk about, are the only vehicles that I've just pressed the gas, put it in high range, and I just drove it without care, and it did not flip over on me, and it just performed incredibly with minimal effort. And to be quite honest, I got into speedrunning for about an hour and a half of my life, that I thought to myself, I'm gonna try speedrunning and to become a speedrunner in SnowRunner, okay, for like contest trials and such. And during that time, couple of the races that I did, I believe, take world records in. I don't think they're up anymore. It's fine. I'm definitely not a speedrunner, but one was with this truck right here. And I don't think it's a testament of my own skill. I think it's more of a testament of just understanding that this vehicle is that good, and I can do things with this truck that others you can't get away with. It comes in at 5.8 US tons, LAS TA240 at 185,000 torque, so it has a very high power to weight. I pretty much use a high range gearbox. It gets the Jet MMD tires. It also gets the, it doesn't actually get an AMHS tire. It actually gets a TMHS tire. So it actually is a heavy weight tire. So this actually is a really good tire to use, because it's double the weight of like an AMHS tire. So you could use this, give yourself some more lateral stability. I would recommend either using this or the MMDs. I think either or is going to be a good pick. But if you want to drive it like a madman, yeah, stability is always helpful, but it is a very, very stable vehicle. However, it doesn't have a ton of add-ons. But the thing is, even with low saddle, I'm pretty much confident in its ability to move full trailers worth of 5 slots of cargo worth of cargo with ease. I did see that there was some type of collision sometimes with this spare tire. I would just take it off, and then you're pretty much fine. It has some van body add-ons here and stuff like that. It has its own sideboard bed. I believe it has fuel in this sideboard bed as well. Yeah, it has a 16-gallon fuel tank as well. Roof rack. So you do get some extra range here with the roof rack and the sideboard bed. However, I do really like using it as a support vehicle like this, or a scout replacement. I really do believe that this vehicle doesn't really need an autonomous winch, because it is just insanely stable. It's crazy how much I've driven this truck without care and got away with the things I've gotten away with. And that's why really it kind of sits up here, is because it is just such a good truck to drive. Now, one other thing I do need to add. For hard mode, I really think you should consider buying this vehicle. Here's why. It cost $28,000. Now, if you go back to Scouts, look a bunch of these Scouts, how much they cost. Lodestar, this is another outstanding Scout, right? $39,000. You can just compare the prices to some of these. I'd rather have a Crocodile than some of those Scouts, but I'm a traditionalist. I like using Scouts how they are, so that's just how it is. Anyways, I think the Step Crocodile stays here at a low A. I'll probably say it's a pretty low A. And the Bandit. Bandit just got an update here as of Season 12 live server. It actually gets doubles in its rear, and you'll see that as we go down here and find it. Here is the Bandit with JAT OMD tires. It finally has doubles. And as you guys know before, it only used to get singles, and has the the balloon tires, the AMHS tires. So here would be your pick for having a more balanced option. Would be either to just use the AMHS tires and have the same lateral stability in its fore and its aft of the vehicle, or just use the JAT OMDs and have a very wide platform in the back and a relatively, I guess you'd call these a single narrow, that like 0.65. So, but yeah, I think these actually help a good bit. I've used them on stream. I've used them quite a bit. I think they do help, but if you really want your balance to be, to not sway in the front so much and give yourself a little wider footprint up front, I would just use the AMHS. So it kind of depends upon what you would like to use. I think with the crane being on top in the order that it's kind of sitting, this can influence its balance quite a bit. Without the crane, or even it turned backwards, two different things. I won't get into that now. However, it has the LAZ TA240 engine. The KRS Bandit, for being an 8x8, is actually not that heavy, coming in at 8.6 US tons, 185,000 torque. I do still believe it has a lot of power. Something I did give it a knock here is because its fuel capacity kind of is lackluster. It does have a roof rack to kind of give it numbers that are probably better to what it, or around what it should actually have just in its tank alone. However, I think it does pretty well with fuel, all things considered. And this is a truck that actually does surprise me a lot. There's a lot of highlights on my channel that show this vehicle doing some crazy things. I do really like using this vehicle. It's actually one of the only 8x8s that can crawl over rocks like it can. There was a clip where I was like falling down the ice and this thing was like nose down and it just crawled out of it. It was just like the most incredible thing ever. Also, lastly, I like to say about this before we move on, it does have very large tires, always on all-wheel drive diff, very good candidate for just slamming into high gear and going if you are comfortable with keeping your balance. These rear tires that are doubles, you can see how it effectively handles very large loads like this. I believe with the singles, the AMHS tires, this would sink even further. So having the doubles, you stiffen up your suspension, give yourself a rear mass scale. I won't get into those things, but anyways, yeah, this truck, honestly, I ranked it a little bit lower before, but it just keeps crawling up my list because every time I use it, I'm just more and more impressed, even though it only has 40 gallons of fuel, and its balance can be conditional, I would say. I think it's a good word for it, but I think it stays up in here as like a higher A piece. Okay, another one that might confuse you here is actually going to be the Zikz 566 Alpha. And the crazy thing is, we'll talk about the Zikz 566 Alpha, but this is actually a new truck from Season 9. And I debated where I was going to put this truck because when I got it and I was using it, I was kind of in disbelief that it was actually this good for being a 4x4. And something that 4x4s really lack is towing trailers from a low saddle configuration. And this one did not disappoint at all. It actually can low saddle, crane, and it hauls trailers really, really well. It has very minimal steering loss, even though its steering is the reason I did not rank it higher. It's kind of slow. If you're going really fast, you really need to be good with leading your steering into things because it's kind of slow. It's definitely not like Crocodile or like a Tayga or something like that, where actually the Crocodiles isn't really that good, but if it had like Tayga steering, this would be amazing. So it has a TA240, which you probably could use this because it doesn't really weigh that much, right? You know, coming in at 7.9 tons, you would still have enough power to pull things and have a little better fuel consumption. However, this engine here is at 200,000 torque for this little thing here. And you can see high range gearbox, it just flies. Really good tire options, has its own custom tires. You can get OMDs and it also can get the MMD tires as well, or just the straight up TMHS. So these are not the 100 kilo AMHS tires. These are the 200 kilo TMHS tires, I believe so. I think those are really good options for it. Very, very stable truck. And it's just an amazing truck to drive, to be quite honest. Roof rack here, 40 gallons, big tires. It's just an amazing 4x4, to be quite honest. And yeah, I think it just stands where it stands. If you want to see the review on it, please go check it out. But That's pretty much all I can say about that one. All right, let's talk about the Tatra Phoenix. So I think the Tatra Phoenix slides up into here, and I think I ranked the Tatra Phoenix a little bit higher before. I do like the Tatra Phoenix a lot. It has an engine coming in at 235,000 torque. So I believe that's the second highest torque in the whole class. Shares this engine with the Voron Grad. It comes in at 17.2 US tons. So it's actually really heavy, kind of on the more heavier range of these trucks here. It's pretty wild to drive with the high range gearbox. And I think I don't use it because its steering is kind of slow, but it's very sharp. So once it actually is like full lock turn, I believe all these wheels steer, and it can turn very sharp. Has a very large fuel tank, I must add as well. Its fuel consumption is pretty good because this engine is actually pretty good. So it's improving upon its efficiency. So the engine is actually still pretty good. Same engine as the Voron Grad, like I said. Has good tire options. I pretty much would use its customs. They're good, but you do have all these Jet tires that you can use as well. So the thing is, my main concern with this vehicle, to be quite honest, is I wish I could do low saddle crane, or just even if I couldn't even use a crane with low saddle, I'd love to use it. I think it would be great. I think using it as a fuel tanker and a support vehicle is kind of like what I do with it, just because you can't even use a Tatra crane with the sideboard bed on this thing. I don't think it'd be a good thing to use it like in that configuration. Maybe just a regular small crane, or even just a Tatra with a low saddle here. But there's not much you can do with this vehicle other than 2-slot cargo deliveries and then pulling a trailer with it, or just being a support vehicle. And I think this is probably the only case where I'm like, hey, this truck probably shouldn't be ranked higher than A, because I think it's generous to put this in the A for me personally, because it does have very good performance. It just doesn't have a ton of versatility. But I do feel it does benefit. It's a benefit to have in your fleet because it can be very strong. So that's pretty much all I can say about the Tatra Phoenix. Okay. Yeah, we're going to throw the Voron D up in here. Okay, the Voron D, Squeaky D, the Voron D-53233 comes in with 200,000 torque. It weighs 14.4 US tons. It has a special off-road gearbox. It gets no other gearbox, so it's kind of suited for my type of gameplay. So this kind of might rub people the wrong way, because I think a lot of folks really do like the high-range gearbox, the fast gameplay, push, fast play. But me personally, I'm more of a slow-paced player. I'll get there when I get there. So I like having the special off-road gearbox, because this vehicle actually is a really good starting vehicle that's kind of slept on, because you don't necessarily have to go over the Drummond Island to get an off-road gearbox, or over to like Alaska to get a high-range gearbox. This already has an off-road gearbox on it when you purchase it. So it is a good starting vehicle. We talk about the Tayga and the Azov being a good starting vehicle. This is actually another one. Gets raised suspension, 50-inch tires, heavyweight tires, as well. I pretty much would use the doubles to give yourself lateral balance, because this is something that kind of plagues this vehicle, is its balance. I think the reason why this does not go into the S tier, honestly the only reason this doesn't go into the S tier is because I value balance very highly. And I think that this truck is very strong, especially it does have a lot of add-ons, but I think once you put these bigger frames on this truck, you can see I have doubles on here to try to just make myself more stable. I probably can use the Jats to even make them even more stable. But the thing is, when you have these big add-ons like this, there is weight in this cab. I don't know, I can't tell you how much offhand, but I do know there is some. And its balance, center of gravity goes up here. It gets a little bit tippy. It's already kind of a tippy truck as well. I wouldn't say kind of, but yeah, I would pretty much use it like this. Use angles, keep your balance with a trailer, and it does an amazing job. Always on all-wheel drive, diff lock. Has a pretty decent fuel tank. I believe its fuel consumption is kind of sporadic at times with that engine, but hey, it is what it is. I do really like this vehicle a lot, but the squeakiness kind of throws me off. But this is probably one of my, I don't want to say it's my favorite favorite Voron, but I do like all three of these Vorons because they're just different in their own way. But I think it's a strong A in my opinion. Okay, so moving on here, we're going to talk about the Paystar. I believe the Paystar goes up here into the A, and this is where I might lose some folks here because I know a lot of people think the Paystar is just very tippy. It doesn't have much power, but this is the crazy thing about the Paystar is it's not many American trucks get heavy weighted tires. And I'm still thinking about bringing out a theory I have about heavy weighted tires on trucks that don't really have a lot of power. So the International Paystar 5070 has probably not a strong engine. It's at 150,000 torque. So it's the second lowest in this whole class. And it does weigh a pretty good bit. It's actually 12.1 US tons. Gets a raised suspension. Sometimes I don't even use it because, yeah, increasing your vertical center of gravity. The truck is not necessarily a very balanced truck, which is why I have OHDs on it and not a different tire set. I want to be able to be more stable. Also, it does drink a little bit of fuel. I would say more than I would like to see out of a 150K torque engine. Even with the consumption of B, it kind of still drinks some fuel. It doesn't really have a lot of it. Switchable options. Its tire size cannot get any bigger with a raised suspension option. That's pretty much the reason why sometimes I don't even use the raised suspension. If I'm going to tow a saddle trailer, I depend on angles a little bit more for balance, and basically it kind of nullifies this truck's balance in any way. I just use angles and I don't really worry about its balance, and it's just totally fine. It works great. So something I've noticed is this is one of the only trucks that gets heavyweight tire options for an American truck. This is why I believe this is special. Now, if you look at like the BM17, the Freightliner 114SD and such like that, they don't, or even some of the ANKs and stuff like that, or the M916A1, they don't have heavy set tires. They're all 100 kilo tires. This has 200 kilogram tires. And there's been some studies or some testing of mine that has come to some, I don't want to say some conclusions, some theories. I'm not going to get into them, but all I can say is this truck can haul more weight than a 114SD can, even though it has lower power to weight than the 114SD. So I do think this is a very amazing truck, to be honest. It's a good starter truck. I think it's really strong. It's actually one of my favorites in the game. Yeah, I use it low saddle, honestly, a lot of times. I can use it other things. Be careful with putting a crane on it though, and just running it with a crane in the sideboard bed, because yeah, putting this crane on it, increase your vertical center of gravity, you can flip over. So I think if you can manage its balance, and then you can manage, that's manageable with double tires. That's how you mitigate the tippiness, right? Get a wider footprint, use jats, and then also keeping it fed. I think you'll just really like the Paystar 5070, because I do. I really like it. All right, cool. Let's move on. I believe we have one more truck to put up in here. And the crazy thing is, I debated putting this truck into S tier, but I actually bumped it back down to A. And I think this is just an inch from going to S tier, to be quite honest. And we'll talk about the step Pike here. I think if I did not play Season 8 again, I probably would have kept this truck in the place I had it last time. I believe it was still in A. But the step Pike, 39331 Pike, gets the LAZ TA240 engine. It comes in at 9.0 US tons. Always on all-wheel drive diff lock. It gets mud tires at 43 inches. It is a good candidate for the high-range gearbox. Keep in mind, it does have some weight in its cab. I believe the distribution, I think, is set a little lower, but there is weight in its cab. That's why you will feel that sway back and forth. It's kind of similar in regards to, I would say, the Freightliner 114SD. It's almost, you almost feel like it wants to give or wants to be tippy, but it's really not, to be quite honest. The other sad thing is it really doesn't have big tires. So, I mean, it does get mud tires, and I think you should use these, the Jats or the MHS tires. I personally use the MHS2s because I want to have the widest footprint I can. I think for this truck, period, I want width, I want stability, because I'm not necessarily depending on angles, because I'm not really going to be using a saddle low a lot in this truck, even though it is configured as such. because of the long frame length. I have seen some collision here. You can make it work. I do make it work. I kind of force it, but to be honest, its collision model is actually pretty good as well. And its ground clearance is actually not too bad. You see how everything's like kind of tucked up in here as well. So I do think this truck is very versatile. It's pretty stable. It can do a lot of the things that it is charged with doing by its add-ons. Not a lot of logs, basically just long logs and stuff like that, but it can do this, which is pretty great in my opinion, especially for hard mode. Not a lot of trucks can do this, so I think that's another bonus there. But yeah, the step Pike is just so strong in my opinion. I believe the last thing I'm going to say about this vehicle, I believe that the step Pike is what the 310 Echo should be. That was kind of my hopes, was the 310 Echo would be very similar to the Pike, maybe get a change, but this essentially is just the finished, more polished version of like the 310 Echo. But the 310 Echo, in my opinion, I think is a little bit more stable. All right, guys, so here's where some changes have come, to be honest. So let's talk about the Azov 5319. This is always going to stay S for me, to be quite honest. And here's why. I think despite the Azov 5319 having a very small fuel tank of 53 gallons, 200 liters, and just sucking gas like it's its job, I think it's still very strong despite low capacity and high drinkage with fuel. It is still a very strong vehicle. So I think it says a lot when a vehicle hits the S tier, even with those two things, because I do like efficiency a lot. And this is kind of the reason why I don't use this vehicle a lot, especially in hard mode. I actually don't even have it in hard mode, I don't think. It just doesn't have range, or I would just use it as a support vehicle in that case, or I would have to just have a lot of support for it, which is another thing I could do. Anyways, it comes in at 17.7 US tons. It's very heavy. It is the third heaviest vehicle in this class. 50-inch tires, so it has much bigger tires than its brother, the Azov 64131. It has a faster gearboxes than the 64131 as well, so it has pretty much the high range is going to make this thing, as I call it when I've reviewed it, it's called the wrecking ball, because it doesn't take any damage to its engine. It is an armored vehicle, so yeah, when you go fast, you hit things, you don't really have to worry about being damaged. It's a lovely thing, right? 210,000 torque, I believe I said that. Doesn't get any race suspension options. It is a very stable vehicle, actually. And for being an 8x8, I believe it crawls over rocks relatively decent. This has one of the best collision models I've seen on an 8x8 truck. If I would break out the collision model and look at it, it is unreal to look at. I think on stream, maybe if you guys come by, I'll check out the collision models and we'll look at this again, but it is very relaxed. And I believe that's why it is just a great off-roader. It's almost like it has a race suspension already attached to it, and it really doesn't. So with its balance being excellent, its terrain collision model being excellent as well, and having 50-inch tires, I'm not necessarily worried about sinking in as much. I'm worried about pushing out performance, which is why like an OHS2 or even like a JAT tire would be, or a JAT OHS would be a good option for this truck. If you wanted to give yourself a little bit more balance, you probably could throw on a JAT tire and give yourself a little bit wider of a footprint. I think this truck is just amazing. I think it can fit all of its add-ons it does, to be quite honest. It's just amazing. It gets this multi-purpose add-on and it handles it really well. And this is why I think this is a good option for it, because it actually gives it fuel. But the problem is you only get one space of cargo, and then you're just pulling mass amounts of cargo behind you, which will kind of slow you down because, yeah, you can see how much power to weight bleed off. This is a pretty heavy unit here, but yeah, it can do a lot of things. It's very versatile. I love this truck, so it's definitely S tier in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about the Voron Grad. Voron Grad's S tier as well. Well, that's the Voron AE. Wait, Voron Grad. Yeah, we'll talk about this. I think this is my favorite Voron of all of them, to be quite honest, just because it got so much power. And we'll talk about this guy. Okay, the Voron Grad. Let's see. The Voron Grad, this engine here is shared with the Tatra Phoenix at 235,000 torque. It weighs 14.5 US tons, pretty much the same as the Tayga 6436 and a little less than the 6455B. Has a very large fuel tank. I believe this is 330 liters of fuel, 88 gallons here. It has pretty good gearbox options. High range is what a lot of people use on it, and its power supports it. As you can see, it's still sitting at S+, even with a 12-ton add-on on it. So yeah, it does pretty well. Gets 50-inch tires, very good tire options, the heavy set kind. I do like using it. You pretty much can use it with single narrows, JAT OHDs, and regular OHDs as well. For my purpose, I think if I'm hauling heavy things, I'm probably going to go with an OHD option. Pretty much OHD 1 to give rear mass scale ×2, stiffened suspension, sit weight heavy down on it, and it has the power to pull it, and it's relatively efficient because of that engine. However, I do see it start to sometimes pull some fuel whenever it's under load, or just when you throw in high gear and it's just trying to keep that constant speed. So it's literally accelerating all the time. It's just so rapid that it does seem to, the fuel consumption can conditionally drink more fuel than I would like to see, actually, especially for what the engine says. It says it's relatively, fuel efficiency. So I guess when I see improving its fuel efficiency, I'm thinking it's going to be under 5.0, but it can definitely get up there. You can see it here with the singles here. I just have it as such because I haven't really played this vehicle a lot on my playthrough. It kind of shows I've been playing other vehicles, but I would either use the doubles if you're gonna haul stuff, or you can use these if you want to use singles. You can use the jats. Pretty much this vehicle can do it all. Has a lot of add-ons, and it pretty much can do them all very, very well. I don't like using it as saddle low a lot. I do kind of force it, but I do see saddle collision here. It doesn't have the quickest turning speed as well, so be careful when you're speeding down trails and you want to turn fast, because it's not going to turn really fast. So you I think its steering is okay. It's definitely not like Tayga steering or like Fleet Star steering, where it's very fast twitch, very responsive. So I will still use it as low saddles, but yeah, it can't do crane, sideboard bed, hitch trailer, stuff like that. And I believe it only can do long logs. So in that case, I don't really care. I think there's other trucks that can do it. This truck is just very good. It's very stable, has a lot of weight in its frame. It does have a little bit of weight in its cab, but other than that, excellent truck that I do believe will stay in the S tier for the duration that I am looking at SnowRunner. So if that says anything. Anyways, let's go up and talk about the Voron AE. The Voron AE is kind of weird because it's a little bit lighter than all the other Vorons. It shares the same engine with the Taygas. So the Voron AE is a little bit lighter than the other guys. Has the same engine here. This is at 200,000 torque. It comes in at 11.7 US tons. So you can see it's a lot lighter than like the Voron Grad and stuff like that. So, however, it gives it a little bit more power to weight because it's lighter. So, and its off-roading ability is actually really strong. Always on all-wheel drive diff lock. It's weird. The Voron AE is kind of like, it's very similar to, I would say, the Voron D. Better balance, less fuel capacity, faster gearboxes. That's kind of how I would talk about it. So it does have the heavy set tires. I use OHDs. You can use the other ones. Jats, comes with jats as well. A lot of options for basically handling whatever. Downsloping rear end. I love using low saddle with it. Even though you might get a little bit of collision here, I still like using it as such. However, I do feel this truck is relatively stable. Has a lot of weight and low in its frame, pretty balanced. There's not really a whole lot I can say about it. I kind of like to stay away from this one because it's very fast. The one thing I would say is its steering is something you're going to have to get used to if you plan on using the high range gearbox, because it is not fast. You need to basically have your eyes on the front wheels whenever you're just trailblazing, but it can push pretty hard down trails. So yeah, I think it's just a very impressive vehicle. Okay, let's get this going here. This is a change. Last time I had the Azov ranked at A+, and you could say this is my bias, but I keep looking at this vehicle more and more, and in the back of my head I say, no, Nate, don't be biased and put this up in the S. I think it just should sit in the A. But the more I look at it, it is actually a really good truck. And even when just looking at its collision model, it's just really good. All right, so 64131. This is actually one of my favorite trucks in the game, to be quite honest. So if you want to know my bias, there it is. I do feel like I have some others too that I'm kind of like shifting over to. But essentially, I'm gonna give you a quick rundown of this vehicle. This is the heaviest vehicle in this whole class at 19.6 US tons. It has the Azov AM engine. It has 210,000 torque. So its power to weight is not that great. So essentially, it is basically an Azov 5319 with more gas, same engine, a little heavier, different gearbox options. So it has the advanced special gearbox, which has no all-wheel drive penalty. Therefore, this truck has amazing fuel economy. It is just insane. I think it is one of the best vehicles in the game at fuel consumption. There probably is a debate about that. It could be the Tatra T813 as well, but honestly, I've never seen this truck get above 5.0 gallons per minute. I'm talking under extreme load going up the Smithville Dam Hill with hauling 5 slots of cargo, and it's just impressive. You can currently use it with any tires you really want, to be honest. I use OHS2s because it is extremely balanced. There's a ton of weight in its frame, and even though it does have a tall sitting silhouette here, and it's not really that wide, its gate, or I guess its footprint is really not that wide, you would think that it would be kind of topsy-turvy or it would flip over or tippy and such. No, not at all. It's a very stable vehicle. If you even wanted to make it even more stable, or you just want to maybe lessen up its pressure on the ground, you could use the jats and do that. It does look good with the jats. However, its collision model is actually very relaxed, similar to the 5319. I wouldn't say it's as good as the 5319. And the 5319 also has bigger tires. I need to mention that as well. So yeah, it's not going to get as good as performance, but something I noticed is that this vehicle can basically handle a lot. If you actually look at its frame and how short it is, it probably shouldn't have all these add-ons, to be quite honest, but it does, and it does them well. So I usually use low saddle it up, and I just pull mass amounts of cargo, and I hardly burn any fuel. This truck will literally go down roads at full speed, 5th gear, pulling less fuel out of its tank per minute than some trucks do at idle when they're just sitting still. It is absolutely incredible. I love this truck. I think even though it doesn't have, and I think my rationale for putting it here is because its weight is great. Its tire options are really good. Its balance is exceptional. It has some of the best fuel economy in the game. And it's really trustworthy. People will say maybe, it gets stuck too much in mud, but the thing is with that, it can if you throw it at the deepest mud. But the thing is, most trucks do get stuck in the deepest of mud. It can't really hold itself up on top of mud like a lot of trucks. It's literally it's a weighted truck. It's for essentially just digging in and churning it up. But I think it does a really good job. And one of the things is when you are stuck is the worst spot to be. And I think being that this truck is really efficient, I'd rather have an efficient truck that I'm stuck in the dirt with, that I know that I'm not going to run out of gas because it's just so efficient. So yeah, I could probably go on talking for hours on this truck, but let's continue here. And then what I like to say about our good old friend, the new addition, the Mack Defense M917. Oh man, yeah, I think the Mack Defense actually goes up at the top right now in front of the Azov 5319, and we'll talk about this in a little bit of detail, not much. Okay, so the Mack Defense M917, I believe this engine right here is 232,000 torque. It is the second heaviest vehicle in this class at 19.4 US tons. It gets a special gearbox. I believe it's the multi-purpose. This doesn't have a low plus option. This is for better fuel consumption. So I think if you're going to use the top engine here, I think going with the multi-purpose is a good idea. I would like this. I really do love low-high, to be quite honest, especially with switchable, but it's fine. I do like the multi-purpose. It gets an active suspension. I think this is great because using it so in its up position is a good thing. And here's the thing. The Mack Defense M917 was in a bad state when it first was released because everything else was great. The truck was phenomenal. And in my review, I said if there was one thing that was fixed, this truck would be just insane. And it was its collision model. And you can go check my review. It actually shows you the collision model. And then I have an update video that's actually attached in the comments. You can look at the update to the Mack Defense. But essentially what happened was they relaxed the vehicle collision mesh of the vehicle underneath so it wouldn't tap all these things or all the terrain underneath it. And it helped out a ton. Ever since that, it's been one of the best trucks in the game to play with. I currently use the OHS2s, or you can use the Mack Defense tires, or if you want to use the Jet OHS, it's a good option, or you can also use mud tires. Any option is going to work good for you. Here's why I believe the Mack Defense is an S tier. I would say at the more top of the S class is that one, it has a very large fuel tank. It has 232,000 torque. It is the second heaviest in its class. It is an 8x8. All wheels turn. Its balance is exceptional. This truck is very, very balanced. In my opinion, it's better balanced than the Azov 5319. It's better balanced than the Voron AE. I believe it's better balanced than the Voron Grad. And I think the only other one I probably wouldn't say it is as balanced as is the Azov 64131. It is incredible, the things I've been able to do with this truck, even though it only has 47-inch tires. I think the only downfall I would probably say about this truck is that it burns a little bit too much fuel. However, it has 93 gallons and a roof rack, so to mitigate that. The only other thing I wish I could do to mitigate its burn values is a switchable all-wheel drive. I would love to be able to force all my power to my rear axles and kind of almost be like a Dairy 4520. That would be great, and just have a lot better fuel consumption. And I would probably, at that point, I probably would run an off-road gearbox or even a high range. I don't know, who knows? But anyways, anything you put on this truck, it works. I think I do kind of stretch it a little bit because its saddle placement isn't really what I would like to see. If it was like here, I would say it's lovely, but it's here. I do get saddle collision, but the thing is I still force it. I still use it because I think I just love this truck. I think it's about time that we got a truck that was actually respectable for the Americans or for the NA class just in general. So anyways, that is the M917. Okay, so I'm going to do these all in one go. I'm gonna put these up here. I'm gonna quickly talk about this because I don't think a lot needs to be said about the Taygas because I've talked about these vehicles kind of extensively on reviews and such. But to be quite honest, I think you could interchange both of these. But in my opinion, I think they still reign supreme. Currently, I like the 6436 better. They both have 200,000 torque. The 6436 weighs, I think, 14.5 US tons. The Tayga 6455B weighs 14.6 US tons. And they are absolutely incredible. And the crazy thing is we'll talk about these. Okay, so 6436, we talked about its engine already. It's a wonderful high range gearbox candidate, I would say. Race suspension, 51-inch tires. It is a lovely vehicle. This vehicle here has much better tire options than its brother, the 6455B. It actually gets doubles. The 6455B does not. They both get the TMHS tires. I believe this vehicle right here also has 1-inch higher tires. And I think this vehicle here, they're both a little bit different. They have a lot of add-ons. The 6455B can do medium logs, and also has a little bit more add-ons as well. It can do the crane trailer and sideboard bed combo. This cannot. However, I think this is the meaning of this truck is you can see short frame, down sloping rear end, saddle placement is actually pretty good. I think this is literally just meant for low saddle configuration hauling, and it does exceptional, especially with heavy weighted tires in the back. As you can see, the doubles. You can use the Jats if you want. You can even use the TMHS tires. I probably would just use the OHDs because I'm not going to get into the whole rear mass scale and all that stuff. You guys want to see that, I'll talk about that on stream. But if you're hauling weight via its saddle. I think putting it down on a heavy set double like an OHD is gonna be the move. Anyways, in my review of this truck, I called it the safety net, and I believe I can pretty much say the same thing about its brother. Is there's nothing really that stands out about its power, its efficiency, or its tank size. Its power is pretty good. Its tank size is up there around the highest. They're not the most efficient vehicles. I believe they're conditionally efficient. It kind of depends on the load. They can spike up pretty high, but not necessarily. It's more sporadic. However, the thing about the Tayga 6436 and the 6455B is their balance is absolutely phenomenal. There's a couple times, and this is another truck that I've actually used testing footage to actually just throw into my reviews. Case in point, for the 6436, I was driving, you'll see in the review, I'm driving crazily and the truck is just holding on for balance. I believe this truck kind of, how do I say this? It gets people through the game, and it kind of is the safety net. And that's kind of the only thing I'm really going to say is this truck basically is like the standard of what like a high class off-road truck really means. And then when we go back and look at the 6455B here, it is essentially its brother, and it just for a different purpose. I think this truck probably could be used a little bit better for, I would say, sideboard bed and crane, and then hitch trailer combo. But the thing is, yeah, I would rather have weight sitting down on my axles. And the reason why I gave this one the ding over it, because I think tire options and just being able to haul a low saddle, it's, in my opinion, I like the 6436 better for that. This does get a lot of good tire options, but it doesn't have doubles. So I think you can interchange these pretty easily and say, yeah, one's better than the other. But in my opinion, this is really how it falls. So hopefully you guys like this tier list. This is essentially what I feel, what trucks are the best here in the off-road category. Please give the channel a like or the video a like, and share this video with someone. And I hope this video was fun for you to watch. I'm sorry it probably was a big lecture there, but if you want more information on this, please go check out my reviews on the channel. Just click SnowRunner Reviews, and I've reviewed all these trucks in detail. So until next time, guys, God bless and stay upright.